Okay, so hello and welcome to Finding the Why. Finding the Why is a community that's brought together by artists, professional artists, Kirstie, Tebbs and myself. And it's basically put together for you artists and creatives to help support you at any point in your career. Now, Finding the Why, we cover topics, kind of, news in the, art news, should I say, certain exposés, and we started to feature a lot of wellness topics just because we want a nice holistic rounded approach to this, and health and wellness is imperative to your practice also. So today we're really delighted to have Fiona Murden join us as a special guest. She's top psychologist, award-winning author and podcast presenter, duct. So yeah, we want to say a big welcome to Fiona and ask you how your week's been.
Oh, my week's been good, thank you. I had a nice chat with you earlier this week, Sarah. And this is lovely. And it's been relatively nice weather as well, which is always a bonus.
Yeah, it has been beautiful. Kind of hopefully it'll last a bit longer. We were discussing SAD last week and kind of how, we kind of need to really pack in the daylight hours when we can. So,
and I definitely I'm a strong believer in SAD lamps as well. So I'd say get them in, order them now before everyone else starts ordering them, because the weather goes funny.
Absolutely, one for each room, I think. And Kirstie, how's your week been?
My week's actually been all right. But I've got my little helper here, I have, who wants to be in the limelight. But other than that, yeah, I've been going around with my new job as a manager of Tebbs Galleries and memorabilia framers. A lot of learning with that, so I've been doing a lot of learning from home. And I went to a private view last night at the Collective Gallery in St Albans, and there's some amazing ceramicists, glass makers and painters in this exhibition. So I'd urge people to go check out that gallery, because there's just some phenomenal emerging artists that are included. And Aisha Adams, who owns the gallery, she is going to be going so far in such a short space of time. She's opened up the gallery. She has made it so much for the community, and she's already done a lot. Since April, she's done exhibitions, she's put emerging artists artwork in the cathedral, outside the museum, in the park, she's started memberships and all of this.
Sounds very good.
Yes. How was your week, Sarah?
My week's been busy. It's been manic. Obviously, kind of put a lot of kind of time into organising the podcast and kind of working in clinic. Clinic's been quite busy. So yeah. But aside from that, it's all good. I've had my sketchbook out quite a bit. Not managed to get to the easel, but I have sent some stuff off for scanning. So I will be releasing a new range of prints soon. So watch out for that. But, yeah. Certain moments of excitement, and obviously yes, I spoke to Fiona earlier this week, which was great. So yeah, all set to rock now. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you on to Kirstie for our first news article, and this is by the Painter's Keys, and it's about artists with low self-esteem.
Yes. So this one's quite an interesting article, mainly from the standpoint that my background is mainly being an artist who's worked with low self-esteem for years, but it's finally just started conquering it a lot more and having a lot more esteem in myself. And yeah, so who does it affect? It affects 10% of the population, mainly creatives and artists who are more prolific to having low self-esteem, despite the fact that they actually have talent, but they just don't always see it in themselves. This is from peers, being self-critical, having loser syndrome, self-sabotage, and not actually seeing the worth in what they do. Social media is also quite a big cause, especially if you're flicking through Instagram and seeing all these amazing artists and just feeling like you can't measure up to what they're doing, or seeing what their success is, but actually their success is fake. it's an illusion. They're only ever going to say the good things that are on there. They're not going to say the struggles and the hard work that they put in. So keep try and stay off of social media, but it's good to be able to get inspiration from. So you just need to let go of the negative myths, and embrace all of your small wins. And this sounds so simple, but it's really, really not. What I've always started doing for the past 3 years is every time I have a small win, it doesn't matter how small it is, even if it's a bad day, the fact that I've gotten out of bed, that's a win for me, and I will celebrate it. On a good day, if I've sold artwork, if I've even made artwork, I celebrate it, and I make it into such a big deal for myself, so it makes me want to keep doing it and be able to have it. But you also have to remember that with successes comes failures, comes learning lessons, and all of that you don't want to bring back into your low self-esteem. You just need to take it on the chin and carry on and learn from everything that happens. And yeah, that's the article in a nutshell.
I think it's about growing with experience as well, you know, kind of seeing the bigger picture and trying not to take it personally, which again, it's kind of, sometimes it depends on your state of mind. I think I don't know, kind of if you'd like to make any comments on these things as well, Fiona.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, because definitely do what you were saying, is celebrate those small wins. It's really, really helpful. It's really important. There are two aspects to confidence. So there's confidence and there's self-esteem. Confidence is being able to carry out a task or carry out a particular goal, whereas self-esteem tends to be more related to the way we talk to ourselves. And there's a lot around just be kind to yourself, talk positively, but it's really hard because the majority of our thinking happens at an unconscious level. So we'll go around with this dialogue that we've grown up with for whatever reason. You can't just suddenly change it. And so doing the sort of thing you were saying, where you say, right, I am going to celebrate, makes it conscious, and it makes it, it brings it into awareness, and it becomes something that is reinforced. So it's a fantastic way of actually approaching that. And it's also, there's loads of research that says we achieve far more when we're kind to ourselves. But again, easier said than done, isn't it? Because it's, oh yeah, I'll be really nice to myself today. But if we actually stopped and pause and listen to how we're talking to ourselves, a lot of the time it will be negative. So there are little things you can do during the day as well. You can set yourself a reminder to just stop, an alarm on your phone or something. How am I talking to myself at the moment? Oh, actually, that's not very good. I'm doing it again. But not even being angry with yourself for not talking to yourself in the right way, because otherwise it becomes this vicious cycle. So it's complex. It's not as easy as it sounds. And sometimes it takes time because you're unpicking stuff that you've grown up with, and it's been inground in your neural pathways for many, many, many years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, it's really good advice, especially kind of the thing about setting an alarm. And kind of, almost stopping yourself in your tracks, and just kind of at that moment of time thinking, what's going on in the day, what's the dialogue in my head, and how can I proceed after this, and kind of almost turn a corner today, and kind of exercise a bit of self-compassion. I think that's that should go. We should have a cue list or something, or a cheat sheet of things, and that should definitely be on it. So the second article is by Psychology Today, and it's called Self-Sabotage and the Art of Becoming Real. And I suppose basically it's a reminder that, everything is an illusion, and it's kind of what we make of it and how we've grown to accept things, or the way we've come to form thoughts in our head. And the idea that sometimes the more effort that we put into something, we kind of think, oh, well, kind of obviously we're going to get a better result, but it's not always quite that simple. It's a lot to do with perfection, the standards that we expect from ourselves, and the amount of control that we actually want to have over the situation. And I think, you know, I suppose control, it's one of those things. It's like, how much control do we really have in life? There's kind of controllables, and then there's non-controllables. And when you're trying to control the bigger picture, there are obviously things that are going to come easier than others. And overcoming, you know, I suppose these three aspects: illusion, the internal critic, those negative voices that we experience in our head, like we've just talked about, and the fact that they actually serve as kind of a protector, you know, from past experiences that we've had. And it's almost trying to save our face. It's trying to stop us from getting hurt again, but it's not necessarily going to lead to the same outcome. And in some ways, I suppose being so on edge can sometimes cause something more negative to happen. It's like, I suppose, over awareness, could I say? And limiting beliefs. And then there's the ambivalence that can come with self-sabotage, or I don't care, and kind of, you know, any movement that you've made forward, it's kind of almost unpicking that. And it just kind of gives us an idea of these three strands that are actually involved with self-sabotage. This article kind of gives us, you know, ways of almost trying to, maybe not rewiring, but kind of hints and tips on how to try and get ourselves to stop it. Much the same way, you know, kind of self-compassion, not expecting perfect, because absolutely nothing in this life is perfect. You can get it as close to, you know, your level of acceptable, or somebody else's level of acceptable, I guess. But perfect isn't really a thing, being a human being, because we're all different shapes and sizes, different, you know, levels of ability, and so on. But this is, I'm not going to kind of go on and on about this article, because I want to give a lot of time to Fiona to talk. But it is a really insightful article, and we don't have PowerPoints this week, but if anybody wants to check out any of these articles, then we will put the links below. And so, Kirstie, I will hand the final one on to you.
Yes, so this one is about the hidden upside to imposter syndrome on BBC Work Life. So some of the upside is sorry, 1 second, reading again, not my strong suit. So with your feelings, where you're feeling unworthy, underqualified, undersecuring, but you do a bit of research in the sense of look into yourself, why you feel this way, and think, well, what am I actually good at? What compensatory behavior do you actually have? What can you actually bring forward? So using your feelings of unworthiness and unhappiness, you can actually start finding the good in yourself, start unpicking it and think about it and see where that takes you. And keep a journal of your behaviors, because then you start finding out if where your imposter syndrome starts creeping in, and how to start avoiding it as well. So 70% of people have imposter thoughts. Now, this isn't just emerging people who think this, just regular people. You've also got to think, well, actually, celebrities, singers, pop stars, all of these people have these thoughts in their heads as well, that they don't think that they should be where they actually are, even though they've worked so hard for it. So you're not alone. And a lot of people feel this way, and talk. It's really, really important to talk, because you'll start feeling less alone and start finding more ways on how to combat it. With being imposter syndrome, it can cause anxiety, feeling overwhelmed, disappointed, only ever seeing faults. But again, just pick it apart, start understanding where these feelings start, and start thinking the opposite and thinking, well, how can I actually change this around? Oh, I'm feeling anxious, hypercritical of myself, and I start over preparing. Okay, stand back. What are you doing? Why are you feeling this way? And how are you going to move forward? Again, easier said than it sounds. And you start thinking, how are you perceived by other people? This can be one of the hardest ones to start combating. You need to be more empathetic with yourself when you start feeling this, because it can start affecting your quality of work, your social standards, your whole self, because you're just so paranoid about the way that you are perceived by other people. And you need to start remembering that yourself is enough. It truly is enough, and it doesn't matter what someone else thinks of you, because at the end of the day, just like artwork, some people get it, some people don't, and the people that don't are not your audience. They are not the people to surround yourself by. You want to be surrounded by the people who get you, the people who understand and accept you for who you are. And you can start taken back on that idea of how you're perceived, because in the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're around the right people.
I think, sorry, go on.
No, you carry on. I just finished.
I was just going to say, I think the interesting thing about this is backed by the research of is it Basima Chewak, who studied or kind of did research at the Institute of Technology in Massachusetts. And it was found that very often the people with imposter syndrome, their skills and abilities kind of matched their peers who weren't kind of, who didn't have such intense feelings of kind of, playing down their ability and their ability to take on board information and develop skills and stuff. They were found to be just as good, and their interpersonal skills kind of in some ways far outweighed those of the people who didn't have these intense feelings and lack of self-worth. And it kind of, I suppose, I mean, this is kind of maybe not so relevant with the research with regards to artists, but when you're talking professions such as, you know, doctors and nurses, they certainly had a much better bedside manner. They were much more empathetic, and they could talk more freely and openly and kind of bond with people more, which actually kind of gave them a bit of an edge in their career. But I suppose if you wanted to take it down the creative route, we, you know, as artists, we need to go out and we need to have conversations with clients, with galleries, you know, with all manner of kind of, you know, professionally based conversations. So I suppose in that way you could apply it to that. But yeah, definitely another really interesting piece of writing there. Again, Fiona, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Well, I mean, both really interesting. So self-sabotage, imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome in particular, I've spent a lot of my career working with leaders in various fields, so medicine, in the creative industry, in terms of maybe a difference, corporate creative, so Burberry, places like that. But leaders in a traditional sense as well as, or we might say the corporate business sense, huge number of them have imposter syndrome, and a huge number of them are surprised when you tell them that all their peers have imposter syndrome as well. And so it's not an unusual thing to have. If you don't have, I don't think it's a pleasant thing to have. And I think it's like everything with psychology, it's on a spectrum. That makes it sound like it's negative, but it's on a gradient. And to an extent, having some of that enables a level of humility, which is what you're describing, those doctors and nurses. And that level of humility maintains your openness and curiosity to what's going on around you. And if that's as an artist, it's how can I try different ways of doing things? How can I grow? How can I look at those people and look at what they've done and not take it as a threat, but take it as an inspiration? And I think it's trying to find that right place. So no one's going into being hubristic, which would be, I'm the best. I'm so brilliant that I don't need to listen to anyone else, or I don't care what anyone else thinks. But it's equally, it's not being in a place that's very uncomfortable, which is often where, unfortunately, imposter syndrome happen, you know, where people are with imposter syndrome. It's this crippling feeling, which is really not nice to experience. In which case, one of the things is checking in on reality, because the thing I often see when people have imposter syndrome is They just haven't kept track of where they've achieved. So they feel like they've cheated, or how can I be here? How can they be saying I'm good? How can they be buying my artwork? Because I mean, you're still thinking of yourself as someone at school who did art, but it's kind of keeping track of your progress, which comes back to Kirstie's point of journaling. Journaling, a massively helpful tool. Is go back, make a little log, look at where your successes have been. You look at patterns, keep a log of nice things people say, feedback, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I suppose they do say as well, you look for what's concurrent with your beliefs.
Absolutely.
So you look for the evidence to substantiate that.
And that's very true with self-sabotage as well, because what we tend to do is we will say we can't do something, therefore we have proven to ourselves that we can't do it because we haven't done it. Mm-hmm. So therefore we're not very good. And so it becomes this sort of circular, a sort of decreasing spiral, which isn't helpful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, as I say, we will kind of put these links in the bio, or kind of, you know, with the final podcast, if anybody wants to kind of read more into them. I have got notes coming out my ears tonight, I'm afraid. And my eyes are going a bit funny because there are so many notes and it's getting dark outside, so I'm having to kind of read quite carefully here.
We're not used to artificial light, are we?
Yeah. I'm going all red as well, I noticed.
That's a good thing. It's all flushed, you know.
All right, I don't need any blusher anyway, so. But yeah, so as I say, we have Fiona joining us tonight, and she has many things to her name, many credits to her name, and I wanted to give Fiona as much opportunity to talk about her work and her books and her podcasts as well as possible. These are all very chunky, substantial subjects, and they, you know, we spoke on Monday, didn't we, that you could spend as much time as discussing them. But yeah, so kind of, I've just been reading Mirror Thinking, and I know you're kind of very much into role modeling, and I suppose role modeling can kind of run side by side with kind of what we experience in things like maybe self-sabotage, and also the you know, low self-esteem, and the way we come to be, and the conditioning that we receive. And I suppose, you know, kind of the people that you have around you, the people that you kind of look up to as you're growing up, and who help to form your personality. I mean, obviously there is always going to be, I suppose, a bit of individuality to it. But yeah, I found it like, would you like to kind of go on and talk a bit more about kind of role modeling?
I mean, the interesting thing, if thinking back to it, Kirstie, you said social media is you know, it's not great for self-esteem. And I think when we think about that in the context of role models, we could say that role models have become false role models. So like you were saying, we're only seeing the positive, we're not seeing, or it's an over exaggeration of the negative. Is, oh, I've had a really bad day, I'm going to post it, and I haven't sold any artwork, or I haven't done this. Social media is quite binary in that it doesn't allow the nuance of human behavior. And the thing about role models in the context of how I talk about them is that we're all role models, so we all learn from one another the whole time. It's how we learn to be human, and it's how we learn one of the most human characteristics, which is empathy. And unfortunately, social media, you know, it's great. I wouldn't know you, Sarah, if it wasn't for social media. You make some amazing connections on it, and it does have its positives, but it lacks the nuance of human interaction, communication, and behavior, which not only is important for our understanding, but also to continually evolve our own level of emotional intelligence and empathy. They're not finished products. That's something that we continually work on and grow throughout life. And so we're all influencing one another. And I think the thing that's interesting as well is it's not just in childhood, and it's not just in teenage years. it's also in our adult years, and it's almost then that we think we are not being as influenced by the people around us. And the fact we're not conscious of it means that we're influenced even more by it in some ways. So the core of it is that we learn our social and emotional skills through looking at and interacting with other people. And also our internal creative world is a mirroring of our external world in our own mind. We're able to visualize and imagine and reconstruct that reality in a way that we want to, and then reinterpret it and put it back out into the world, whether that's in a creative process, through writing, through design, through pure art where people are painting and drawing. And so the brain is interesting, but it doesn't exist in isolation. We're so interconnected.
Yeah. Trying to kind of find where I am. You've given some really interesting examples within the book, not just about family but peers as well. And you mentioned Bonnie and Clyde, Bonnie and Clive, even Bonnie and Clyde. It's a new couple. And
rewriting history.
Yeah, why not? We're all here to do, something. But like how she was kind of, she had aspirations of Broadway and stuff, and all of a sudden she met this guy, got on, they found commonalities, and then she got more into him, and then he'd been influenced by his brother and his peers, and all of a sudden she was sucked into this whole drama that she never actually anticipated, yet it became natural behavior. Mm-hmm. And that was like really, really kind of interesting.
And what I've been reflecting on, this is, you have to excuse me with my mind wandering, but what I've been reflecting on is the anti-vaxxers and people that are pro-vaccine. So it's caused a lot of arguments in a lot of families, real disputes. And I've got, even within my sort of network of friends, there are a brother and sister I know who aren't talking to each other at the moment because one's pro-vaccine vaccination, one's not. And I was reflecting on this, mirror thinking, reflecting, and I was thinking about how that's an example of we've been isolated from our normal social norms. So normally, if you were, say, pro-vaccine, you might have a friend who's a bit anti it, but because we're living in such isolation at the moment, even though we're talking on Zoom and doing these sorts of things, and we're being fed a sort of reinforcement of our own beliefs via social media, just because what we follow will then get perpetuated, that there's no questioning. So we become more and more entrenched in certain beliefs, which I think is why it's become so binary. This, you either are anti-vax or you're pro-vaccination. And because we haven't had these little pushes and pulls that we're normally having when we go to the supermarket and we have a chat with someone at the checkout, or, I know we're still doing those things, but it's now via a plastic screen and with masks on, and we're missing so many nuances and normalities of social interaction that normally shape who we are. But those little iterative things impact us all day, every day. Well, they should do, if we're not in this funny little world that we're in at the moment.
Yeah. Do you think it's made things more segregated since COVID began? Because
I do. Yeah, I think because it's taken away these nuances, it's made it more binary. But that's my opinion. Other people might have a different opinion on that.
Yeah. It's kind of, I was thinking, generally kind of as you kind of grow up and you kind of make your way in the world, you do tend to find your tribe, so to speak, the people who think similarly to you and to have common interests and stuff, rather than being put in a classroom, full of people who are kind of still forming, and kind of the perception of the people within that tribe, you kind of, you're saying you kind of accept the quirks. But this is kind of almost more of an extreme version of that when you've got the vaxxers and the anti-vaxxers, I suppose.
And I do think it's because I agree with Kirstie's point that you'll find the people as an artist, you'll find your people, you'll find the people that appreciate your work. And I've had to go through that with writing books, because I've been in a world where I do my work, and if I do my work well, I get feedback that I've done my work well. And suddenly you put something out into the world, like an artist, and I'm not proclaiming to be a proper creative, because I'm not, but anyone can critique it and say what on earth they like about it, and it makes you very vulnerable. And I had to come to a place where it's the people that need to read it will read it. The people who it's right for. But again, there's a nuance, isn't there? Because I think we do need to find our tribe. We do need to find people that support us and carry us through. But within that, in a normal environment, there'll be differences of opinion, there'll be differences of thought. But as soon as you take that into an online situation, those nuances can be lost. So everything is exaggerated. And so it becomes more problematic rather than being necessarily beneficial.
Yeah. I think just kind of going back to the start of your book, you were saying that a baby, and this, I found this quite mind-blowing, was it 45 minutes, 41 minutes old, would start to mimic.
You see, this is where you'll quote things at me and I won't be able to remember what I've written.
So I just find it
Thanks for quoting that.
Sorry. We'll go back to the elephants. We'll touch on
I do remember. I do remember it.
But it's just like, if we think from that age, from such a young age, we are being influenced by the people around us. It's just kind of mind-blowing. I suppose everybody's got a perception of how responsive children are. And some people would have them as, they would, I don't know, I didn't even want to put it into words, but yeah.
I mean, I think the interesting thing is that we're not aware of how important those interactions are. Mm-hmm. So I think we know, we'll all say, well, yeah, our parents shaped us, or whoever our caregivers were shaped us positively or negatively, or, an array of both. But I think we forget that if we didn't have that interaction, we just wouldn't be human. Mm-hmm. And that's what's a bit mind-blowing, because as humans, we're born with an amazing brain, but a lot of it is blank still. It's sort of there ready to be programmed or ready to learn. And I give an example of a girl who, I mean, it's horrible because for a start, it's not ethical. You don't take people away from their parents. You don't take babies away and go, oh, let's see what happens if they don't interact with anyone for 5 years. But sadly, this girl called Oksana she was left out in the cold by her parents when she was 2.5 years old, and she was brought up by dogs for a number of years, and she couldn't speak, she couldn't walk, she walked on all fours, she ate scraps of meat, she lapped up water as if she was a dog. Because whilst we see all those things of learning to eat, it's something that we do developmentally. We might see a 2-year-old, I can't remember what age, I've got 2 children, but I can't remember what age they learn to feed themselves and things, but you know what I mean. A 6-month-old's not going to be feeding themselves, but a 2-year-old might be. But actually, they have to be learnt by watching and interacting with other people. They're not just a given. It's not just you get to 3 years old and you'll probably be able to do this because that's been programmed into our sort of genetics. No. And that's where it's really the most important factor, is that empathy is not just a given. We learn empathy and we develop it throughout life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I suppose it's something if you're that way inclined, you do take it for granted, don't you? You just kind of, until you start experiencing other people who might not be so that way inclined, you just kind of accept that that's the way you are, and that's the way that things must work. But yeah,
I have to say that what you just said is really interesting. As a mother of a baby that's going to be turning 1 very soon, it's just phenomenal to see how she really does learn from myself, from my partner, from everyone else. From the moment she started realizing that humans walked, she's wanted to walk ever since, and she's done it. She's seen me eating, all of a sudden she wants to grab it and eat it. We really are massive influences, and external influences are such a big thing on people. Even as adults, external factors are just so there, and you react to everything that's around you. We never lose that sense of self in that childish situation. And yeah, that's why I find your book actually quite interesting, the idea of mirror thinking.
Thank you. But I think the other thing is just remembering how much we need one another. You know, we really need to connect with one another, and we need to connect with one another in a really good quality way. People need people, and I know we say, yeah, we know that people are getting more lonely, we're on Zoom, but actually just savoring those moments when we're with people and listening and engaging is so important.
Yeah, you do start to feel a bit lost without it. You know, I suppose we are blessed with modern technology, and it serves, you know, a great purpose in like holding a, well, it's certainly held a lot of us together during lockdown and stuff, but it's not quite the same as reaching out and going and having them conversations and actually being with somebody and having the energy around you, I guess, and that has been a loss. And I you know, when with your example of Oksana, and you know, being raised by dogs essentially, and not being inducted to any kind of socialization on a human level, it's it's incredible, I suppose, a person's ability to survive in them circumstances as well.
And I think we would say we wouldn't expect them to be able to add up or to write, but we forget those other elements also just don't happen naturally. They don't just happen. But what you're saying is Kirstie, with your 1-year-old, is that she's feeding, like she's seeing, she's hungry, she wants to engage, she wants to learn, she wants to grow, and she'll get to the next bit, and then she'll watch to see what else she can learn and grow. And if we can maintain that hunger throughout life to be curious about what's around us, be curious about other people, be curious about the external and the interconnected world as well as our internal world, because you know, imagination and all that is so important. I think it makes life exciting.
I agree. That curiosity is a spark that I hope for her she will never ever lose, because it's something, curiosity is just stamped down in society really, to a point where people need to conform, and you know, these exams and school and all of that, which I have my own beliefs on.
I do, and they're not positive.
Yeah. And it's this curiosity that kids need to keep as adults, because that's where I truly believe that it then keeps an open mind, and that's where problems can get solved, as well as being able to just push ourselves forward.
Absolutely. I like the fact that it's getting darker and you can see less and less of me. It's like I'm at a party, you know.
Yeah. You need the flashing lights.
No, that would reveal too much of my face. This is much better.
You've got a beautiful face. You shouldn't be hiding it.
Thank you.
I'm going to put a disco ball on one week. That'd be fun. So, would you like to tell us a bit more about your podcast?
Oh, yeah. Well, so my podcast is, my husband was nagging me for ages, because basically what I've done for years and years is profile people, which involves a 4-hour in-depth look at someone's life, what makes them who they are, and then to look at whether they're going to fit in a role, or and I you know, also to help people understand their potential and what they're capable of, and to unlock things they may not be aware of. But it made sense really to translate that into a podcast, but I resisted it for a long time, partly because my husband was telling me I should do it, which tends to be a good reason why I won't do something, because I'm stubborn. But actually, what it's turned into is chatting to people I find interesting, people whose viewpoint I find interesting and respect, and then also chatting to my friend Lou Jones, who's a sports psychologist. And Lou and I will talk every other week about all sorts of random things. We're talking about why cognitive bias training doesn't work tomorrow on our podcast, but we've talked about things like to-do lists and the psychology of to-do lists, and we come at it from different angles because she works with athletes and I don't. And so it's fun. And then I've got amazing guy now who edits it for me, called Giles Paley Phillips, who is the kindest person on Twitter. If you don't follow him, you should, because he just gives out kindness. But I was on Giles's podcast, that's how I met him, and stayed in touch, and I feel really privileged that he now edits mine.
That's cool. Yes, I do follow Giles.
He's wonderful. He's a wonderful man.
Yes, he's got lots of positivity to give out and lots of love, and yeah, definitely worth.
And he genuinely is that person. He's genuinely is. It's not just this is what I put on social media. He's a great guy.
Mm-hmm. No, everybody should follow Giles as well as Fiona.
Yes.
So, do you have any questions, Kirstie?
Yes. So, actually, one of my questions was, what got you into wanting to be a psychologist, in a sense, because it's a very interesting job to choose to have.
So I wanted to try and work myself out. And I also really enjoyed helping friends sort out their own worries and niggles and issues when I was a teenager. And those two things combined drove me quite hard to start. I just started reading up. My dad lived in York, and I lived down south of England. Go up and visit Dad, and I'd go around secondhand bookstores, and I would just pick up any book I could on psychology, and some of them were really old and out of date, and I fed myself a whole load of incorrect information, but I was just fascinated by it. I had a teacher that inadvertently took me off course for a while down the route of doing medicine. I also wanted to do fashion design. I loved art, looked at doing foundation years, and wrongly was encouraged to do science, because that's what if you're a girl and you're good at science, well, you should be doing science. Well, I think you should do what you enjoy, basically. But anyway, that's a whole other story. I do love psychology, absolutely love it. And I've gone off the wrong route a few times. So I did psychology at university, wanted to do clinical, thought I can't cope with this because I'm too bonkers myself. So went into business, but thought, but I like people, I like working out. So went back to psychology. So I've gone sort of round the houses a few times.
I heard you also wanted to be a fighter pilot.
Oh yes, I did, definitely. But I didn't want to kill anyone. That was a slight issue with it. There was that, and the fact I wasn't tall enough.
Okay. Kind of reminds me of my niece a little bit. I think her current career ambitions are is it a heavy metal drummer?
Oh, cool. I love that.
Yeah, I think I might kind of try and get her in touch with Dave Grohl or something. Maybe we can make it happen for her.
There's someone that knows him.
Yeah, we need connections. Anybody knows? She's a little sweetheart. She's a little madam as well. But yeah, I could actually see her doing heavy metal drumming.
Heavy metal drumming's good. My brother discouraged me from doing drumming. I think he just didn't want me to make lots of noise, but I really wanted to do drumming when I was growing up.
I think it probably comes with its catharsis as well. Just kind of probably a bit like boxing or something.
Yeah.
But can I just ask, knowing what you know now, kind of what's the kind of most rewarding client that you work with? is it kind of more business, or is it kind of more leadership, or, you know, creatives, or is there any one element that you really thrive when you're working with that kind of client? Or
I love people, and I love helping people to just feel, I know it sounds really cheesy, but feel happier and feel more fulfilled. And I feel really passionate about the charity I work with, where we're working with a lot of less privileged kids and looking at how to help them, but right through to, you know, some of the leaders that I coach who I've just got amazing friendships with as well. But I'm really lucky because now I'm old, I get to pick and choose a bit more on my clients. So if there's someone who I think, no, thank you, then, and you know, when I say that, the reason would be is just because someone's closed-minded or cantankerous, or they're not really interested in doing it. They just want someone to solve stuff for them. Anyone who's interested in learning and exploring, I just think is a pleasure to work with.
That's cool. Yeah, that's a really beautiful way of putting it, and it's not cheesy at all. It's kind of, I think we're both quite similar, that we really love helping people, and kind of even outside of our careers, it is kind of a bit of a focus. And I suppose it's one of them things. It's in your personality, and you choose careers that kind of gravitate towards people, and towards trying to help people thrive in their own skins, and find out what they're all about, that themselves are all about, but maybe in different ways, you know.
Definitely, I think there are different ways of doing it. Yeah, and I think creativity in its purest sense is a way of helping people, because it's a way of giving people joy and inspiration and provoking different ways of thinking or looking at the world, and that's all helping people as well.
Yeah. And kind of with regards to kind of the main challenges that you find in your career and in your job, is there any particular ones that stand out for you? Or
I guess applying what I know to myself. So it's very much do as I say, not as I do, which of course goes completely against what I've written about in Mirror Thinking. I am quite open about the fact that I'm very much a work in progress and still pretty screwed up myself, despite knowing the answers to a lot of things on paper. And I think sometimes that frustrates me, because I think, you know, I can give out all of this advice. Why can't I just do something myself? But equally, it's wonderful to be in a career where I can, you know, part of my job is continuing to explore those things, and to also think about, well, what about other people who know the answers but can't apply it to themselves? And how could I help them? Because there's a lot of other people that might offer their friends advice on this, that, or the other, but it doesn't mean they can do it themselves. So it doesn't mean you have to be a psychologist to be in that situation.
Yeah, I suppose I completely identify with what you've just said, and I'm sure Kirstie, you do too. So we're very good at like offering advice, but can we take it ourselves all the time? But I suppose, you know, we're aware of that, and kind of that's one of the first, they'd say it's one of the first steps to actually doing something about it and making that change. And we're probably further ahead than we give ourselves credit for. I'd like to think so anyway. It doesn't always feel it, but
well, the podcast I did with Tasha Ulrich, Dr. Tasha Ulrich's interesting in that respect. She's an expert in self-awareness, an American lady she's a lovely lady, but it's quite interesting listening to that, because I think we're under the illusion there's different aspects to self-awareness. I'm not going to go down that one now, but it's quite a complex concept. But if people are interested in that, I'd say listen to that podcast episode.
Yeah, you can certainly put all these links with the podcast. Kirstie, what were you going to say? Sorry.
Actually, I wasn't really going to say anything. I was just going to say thank you so much for answering our questions and telling us more about yourself, because you are actually incredibly interesting, and the things that you have done and have researched, I think will really, really interest our viewers, and it is as much as it has interested both of us.
Thank you. I mean, it's a real pleasure to be asked to come on. So thank you for your time. And thank you for the time of everyone that's listened and watched as well.
So it's our art challenge now, isn't it? Our 5-minute end of show. Amazing art extravaganza challenge.
So Kirstie, tell us what we're going to do.
So again, just like last week, all of my art supplies are packed up because I'm moving this weekend.
Oh, wow.
So this week, all I have by me is a pencil because all my pens are in my car. So use what you have around you, be it a pen, pencil, charcoal, pastels, paints, you name it, whatever's on your desk, use it. And on the basis of self-sabotage and knowing about ourselves, we're going to be expressionistic. I think that's the first time I've ever been able to say that word, the first time.
Very good.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're going to use the next 5 minutes to just put ourselves on the page, whether that's abstract, figurative, however you want to do it.
Okay.
Lovely and open.
I'm scared now.
I know, I've got to do myself, but in the colour of grey, so I don't know how I'm going to do that yet.
Better, so I can hear everybody. Mine's just weird.
Yeah, let's see yours, Sarah.
Sometimes you just don't know what's going to come out. So, right, okay. So this is kind of almost, oh, it's going to be one of them days again, is it? So
there we go.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Angles. I don't like these kind of backgrounds because they
yeah, you see, on this podcast, all we do is magic art. It disappears itself.
Yeah. I wish I could put it like
there we go
green because you could see it much better. This I'm gonna have to describe it. So it's kind of a self-portrait, but I've always had a thing about my eyes being different. Some people realize and other people don't, but I've always been distinctly aware of like my eye, my eyes not being entirely symmetrical and one being kind of slightly closed. I'm a Leo, so I have a mane, and yeah, I try to do everything with love, and that sounds really, really twee, but I'm kind of the kind of person who tries to come to terms with things and forgive and just kind of, I kind of want to see people happy, so hence the hearts, and kind of even when you cry, it's kind of because you've got a heart and because you're feeling things very intensely. There's a lot going on in there, shall we say. Don't judge me on it. There's not much color. I wish I could have had more color, but I've kind of, all my pencils are somewhere else, so that's me. I've got a sunset as a mouth.
I like that.
Right, but probably an African sunset, I'd say.
Yeah. Fiona, did you want to share what you've done? You
Mine
can say
just,
no.
It's just a doodle, really. It's
oh, wow.
Probably can't even see it. It's just, maybe it's what it says about me. If I was to psychoanalyze it, is I'm a bit of a muddle. It's just, I guess when I was at school, something I always used to do when I was in lessons and things was draw shapes and shapes and shapes and shapes. And there are a lot of circles in there. I do like circles, and I just find them very satisfying. I think we probably all do, really, because of what they represent. And for me, a circle is the evolution that we go through, not as animals, but in our own lives. So that continual learning and evolution of who we are. So that maybe I described in words better than I put on a piece of paper.
It's great, honestly.
We should all have an exhibition.
So mine, because I had grey, I decided, you know what, let's go more into the negative emotions that I have at the moment, because I'm always really smiley, so not everyone sees that side of me. So I turned it into a bit more of a sculptural piece of paper. So I used mark making, jaggedy lines, as well as softer, smoother curved lines, with this crumpling sensation. Yeah, we can psychoanalyze it all day, or we can take it for what it is.
I like hanging out with you too. It's fun.
Oh, it's good. We must have you back, and then we can just like fill a whole kind of session of talking about animals and elephants and animal behavior, and that was cool.
Oh yeah, I'm certainly not an expert on animal behavior, but I love them.
Yeah. No, we had I have to say to everybody, we had a really, really good conversation about elephant behavior before the show went live, and it turns out we all love elephants. So I'm quite sure we could fill an entire hour talking about elephants in Africa and cats and dogs and
Yeah. All right.
So, we'd just like to thank everybody for coming along this evening, for giving up your evening and for joining us. I'm sure you kind of will agree Fiona's made the perfect guest. And if you like the content and you find the value in it, please don't be scared to like, share and subscribe. It's always great to have new members of the community, and remember, we're kind of here to support you, and we're all growing together. You know, as Fiona said, we're all work in progress, and we may grow at different rates, but there's no reason why we can't, you know, all kind of club together with that positivity and kind of just kind of evolve in our own unique ways. Next week it's a surprise. We like surprises, so we're going to surprise you with next week's podcast, so you tune in and
keep an eye out for the post that we're going to do with what it's actually about, or just turn up and see what happens. It's always good. But yeah, we want to thank you for those of you who have come tonight. It's actually the largest live audience that we have had tonight, so thank you. Thank you, Fiona, for being here tonight as well. Massive thank you. You're an incredible woman, incredibly interesting person, and I've enjoyed you. Sarah's enjoyed you, and I'm sure everyone else has enjoyed you.
It's very kind. I will take those words with me and try and remember them when I'm trying to get to sleep tonight and I do my gratitude thing. So
yeah. Right. Yes. So thank you so much, and we will see you all next week. So please have a good week. Take care, and we will see you soon. Bye.
Bye.